Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today. Welcome back to Dominions 5 for another Basic Nation analysis, and this is Basic Nation Analysis Middle Age Xibalba. Look at that happy frog. He's so happy. He's so frog-like. In any case, this is Middle Age Xibalba, and Middle Age Xibalba, full disclosure, is definitely on the short list of worst nations in the game. It has a lot of problems. There are some things there that you can use, but they're very circumstantial and kind of difficult to do anything with. So let's talk about the nation and why. So first of all, this is my expansion, as you can see. You may notice I only have, it's turn 12, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 provinces. That's bad expansion. I also started with an Awake Expander. A snaky lady, the Teoto Inan. This is the same chassis that I used for early age Xibalba. I feel like for middle age Xibalba, it's also probably a pretty solid choice. There are other choices you could make, and I'll talk about them. This is the one I decided to use this time. It didn't work out quite as well as I was hoping, but the Teoto Inan can expand perfectly well as long as you give her regeneration, and preferably, like, hard skin is ideal, and in fact, regen hard skin would work pretty well for middle age Xibalba. I wanted to get Blood 4, which I don't think actually worked out as well as I had hoped. It could work out, but I don't know. Like I said, I only ended up with 11 provinces. Now, part of this was that AI Asphodel started over here and went into the water, and so Asphodel and I have kind of been sparring over the water, which normally Middle Age Xibalba has a pretty good chance of getting several water provinces unmolested. But I happened to start well away from the actual big ocean, and with one of the very few amphibious nations right next to me. If we look at the nations that are in this game, all AIs, of course, we've got Arco, Man, Asphodel, Bandar Log, and Is. So there was going to be a little bit of water competition no matter what I did. In any case, Middle Age Xibalba's early expansion is sort of fraught. Because their troops are garbage. Like, genuine, outright, absolute garbage. Which militia are just bad. I mean, they're militia troops. They only cost 3 rec points, so that's their strength. And they have 11 strength, so you can pump out 10 of them for 30 rec points and have 12 siege strength. Much dart throwers are garbage. They have a fairly low damage. Well, it's not low damage exactly, but it's low range and low precision. Because their precision is 8 natively. Ranged weapon, it's just not good. Obsidian darts are not useful, and they only have 4 ammunition. And then once they go into melee, they're shit melee units. Much warriors are independent light infantry, except they have lower prot than normal. Much warriors with obsidian club swords at least do some damage, but half the time it's slash and half the time it's blunt. So it's not reliably even good. And once again, low prot. Or you can get the guys who have decent prot, like average prot, except their defense skill is very mediocre, and they still have no helmet, so they're incredibly vulnerable to being shot in the head and killed. And in a game like Dominions, where everything relies on large numbers and the law of averages, that will happen. And then you have 3 capital-only sacreds, none of which are very good. You've got the Chakmuch dart throwers, which are have all the problems of regular dart throwers, but are more expensive because they're sacred. They have this poisonous skin thing. So the Chakmuch poison causes fatigue damage, but it's resisted by size, and it's also resisted just by using a long weapon, I believe. I don't know, I haven't tested the exact mechanics of this, but as far as I know, just having a weapon of like length 3 prevents this from working pretty much overall. So it's not very useful. The poison darts with the paralyzing poison can be useful against thugs sometimes, but once again, reduced for large targets, most thugs tend to be giants, or cavalry, so size 3 at least. You've got the Chakmuch Obsidian Warriors, who have high damage magical weapons, but once again kind of expensive, high resource cost for garbage prot. They have an Obsidian Cuirass, which costs the earth. It's magical armor, but not great magical armor. They have a crappy hide shield, and they once again have no helmet. And then you have the Womuch, who is just about the only one of the sacreds that's worth anything, because they have natural prot, so they have some protection on their head, and their armor protection is actually pretty good, their torso protection. Their Obsidian Blade hits hard because they are size 3 giants, they have more hit points, they have high strength, decent attack and defense skills. You can use Womuch. They're expensive for what you get, but you can use them. So that's the troop lineup. It's bad. The troop lineup is bad. Outside of the capital, in forests and in caves, you can recruit Zotz. Limited numbers, a max of 10 per month. However, Zotz warriors are better than any of your national troops because they're so much cheaper. So it's worth just spamming out Zotz warriors from forests when you can, when you have the money. You won't often have the money, though, because of your mages. Your mooch mages, your frog mages, are also bad. The Ayats is fine. Cheap, little research dude. Water 1, Death 1, which aren't very useful cross paths, but whatever. He gives you 9 research points for 65 gold. The Aha, also okay. He's sacred. He's a priest level 1, 9 research points. Water, Earth, once again, not super useful, but you can use those paths in caves to summon cave crabs, which is kind of a neat little niche thing you can do. Other than that, just a basic small mage priest can lead small sacred parties. Then you get the Much Kuhul. The Much Kuhul is 300 gold, 290 gold. Water 2, Earth 1, Death 1, Holy 1, and 1 random from Water, Earth, Death, and Nature. Here's the problem. You're paying 300 gold for a mage who is, at best, Death 2. At best. I mean, Death 2 is great, but you're not going to pay 290 gold for it. The Much Kuhul has a lot of little things that I don't think these things actually add to the price of a unit in autocalc. The Mountain Survival, Swamp Survival, Dark Vision, Gift of Water Breathing. No, I think it's just that this chassis, this frog chassis, is super overpriced for some reason. Because 290 gold, like, from a numerical standpoint, 290 gold for 4 paths plus Holy 1 doesn't sound totally unreasonable. It's a little bit expensive. It's like almost 70 gold per path. It's more than 70 gold per path, actually, unless you count the priest level. But it doesn't sound totally unreasonable. But when you look at what the paths are, they don't synergize very well. I mean, Earth 2 is useful. Death 2 is useful. Water 2 is kind of useful, but mostly just underwater. The problem is that those are never useful at the same time. So you're paying 300 gold for somebody who's really just level 2 in something. Unless he happens to random Nature 1, in which case he just sucks. Absolutely garbage. So the value is not there for the Muchkul. The Bakab is that same problem, but worse. The Bakab is 450 gold and slow to recruit, and the best thing he can be is Water 4, which is not very good. He could be, actually the best thing he could be is Earth 3, to be honest. He can random Death 2, but Death 2 is even less impressive on a 450 gold mage. Water 4, okay, everyone can boost water. You don't need high-level water. You can forge the items to get high-level water if you have Water 1 somewhere in your nation, or Water 2. Water 4 is not really a selling point for a nation that's mainly going to be competing on land. Like, yes, you can fight underwater, but you can't fight underwater as well as the actual water nations can, so this sort of goes to waste because you're going to lose anyway. Earth 3 is valuable. Earth 3 is valuable. It's not 450 gold of valuable. You also have Chakmuch Assassins, who are sacred, capital only. You can do assassin shenanigans with these guys because, as I said, they're blessable. You can use your water magic to forge them holy water in order to carry your bless if you took an appropriate bless. Their weapons have the paralyzing poison and do high damage. They're decent assassins. They have assassin 1, so yeah, okay, fine. They're useful. They're expensive, though. They're over 100 gold. They cost more than a mage, which is bad for assassins, especially because these guys aren't, like, super more useful assassins than basic human assassins. In any case, so this is your capital, right? You've got these super overpriced mages. You've got overpriced assassins. You've got troops that are not overpriced. They're fairly cheap, but they're garbage. Actually, the basic infantry are slightly overpriced because they are so garbage. I would rather have regular human infantry with hats on. Your sacreds are kind of limitingly expensive. You have one really good thing in your capital, which is the Camazotz. Yes, you get Camazotz. 165 gold for 4 paths. Death 2 right off the bat. Blood, and then they can random air or earth. Plus, they have the blood searching bonus. These guys are fantastic. Camazotz are amazing. They fly, they're stealthy, they're blood searchers. They are old, but like you can live with that, especially because they have blood, so they can just feast away afflictions. Like, it doesn't matter much. These guys will break you into blood real hard. But that's the only good thing you have in your capital, quite frankly. Everything else is bad. Womooch, kind of usable. These Mooch warriors, usable in very large numbers. Your frog mages suck. You have to have some of them, but you don't want many of them. Chocmooch assassins, maybe sometimes if you build for them. Outside the capital, things actually get a little bit better. Because in forests, for example, you can recruit Zotz commanders, including the Way. Wayob are 145 gold for 3 paths. They're terrible researchers because they have inept researcher 4, but they have blood and they have nature 2. So 145 gold for fast flying nature 2 plus blood access, and they have the blood searcher bonus. That's valuable. That's useful. In forests, you should build labs in forests and start pumping out Wayob, and then you should fort forests and start pumping out more Wayob, like, pretty quickly. They are going to be kind of your base mage that you're going to use for a lot of things through a lot of the game. Because, as mentioned, your frog mages are terrible, so you don't want to use many of them at all. Building forest in plains, of course, doesn't get you anything. I built this forest here because it had cataphracts, and I was like, oh god, yes, please give me a good unit. Allow me to recruit some of them. Unfortunately, rec points aren't really high enough for me to do much with it, because cataphracts, of course, cost a lot of rec points. But at least I get a couple, and then I can kind of fill in the space with a couple of frogs. Whatever. The basic theme, I think, of Xibalba, however, is that Xibalba pays a lot for amphibious access, and it's not strong enough to actually beat the water nations that are going to be underwater, fighting it for underwater access. So you kind of have to get lucky with placement in order to function. You can see here, I did do a little bit of expansion with assassins. I recruited 2 Chocmooch assassins. They killed the commanders in these provinces, and then I moved in and took them for free. Then I clashed with Asphodel, and we've kind of fought a couple times here. Haven't been able to get to them. I tried to assassinate a centaur this turn, a carrion centaur. Failed dismally because, of course, carrion centaurs are not affected by fatigue. And they have the sleep vines, which, it's actually kind of interesting. I mean, they get 6 attacks is the thing. So even though their attack is absolute garbage, my defense skill is also absolute garbage. So when they get 6 attacks, they do get to hit me. Plus, he cast Quick Roots on himself, which gave him swiftness. So, this fight was, yeah. See, I'm up to 67 fatigue now. And now I'm at 98 fatigue, and decaying, because his Bless contains decay weapons. I haven't hit him yet, I don't believe. I have not hit him. At all. Despite him having a defense skill of 9. So, yeah. I just got slapped to death. In any case, A Snaky Lady has done most of my expansion, because your national army that you start off with as middle-aged Xibalba is 10 of these guys and 10 of these guys, and all 20 of them cannot take an equivalent number of independent infantry. They just can't. In order to expand, I found you kind of have to either do assassins, or you have to use Womooch. Womooch with an appropriate bless can do some work. The appropriate bless is like regeneration plus hard skin, or regeneration plus blood bond, or it's got to be some kind of pretty powerful incarnate bless, because they're not really strong enough to expand without a powerful incarnate bless, and they're expensive enough to sharply limit your recruitment. But if you get a powerful incarnate bless, they can expand. In hindsight, probably the best thing to do is regeneration plus blood bond. That will keep them going quite a while if you have like 8 in an expansion party, 8 or 9, and they hit hard enough to cut through most independents anyway. This bless, I kind of tried to cheap out here because I wanted desperately to have some scales, because Xibalba needs some scales. Regeneration, and then I went Earth 4, Blood 4. I shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't do that. I would probably just go, like I said, Regen Blood Bond, I think is probably the ticket. But the Tioto Inan can expand pretty reliably as long as you have your Dominion around. And your troops then just sort of have to back that up. You should not anticipate getting more than maybe 15 or 16 provinces. If you get more than that, I would take that as a testimony to either how good you are as a player or how lucky you got, because middle-aged Xibalba struggles with expansion. Now, middle-aged Xibalba's mid and late game plan is just blood. They don't have anything else that's really strong. You can recruit a few Bakab in order to try to get that Earth 3, and you have a little bit of death access, but through Camazotz. Here's the thing. Camazotz are cave recruitment. So your capital, you can recruit them in your capital no matter where the capital is. You can also recruit them in any other caves on the map. realistically speaking, if you're playing on a standard generation, random generated Dominions map, that means they're capital only, because a standard randomly generated Dominions map won't have many caves, if any. If Agartha is in the game, there might be a cave or two, but in general, Dominions hates generating caves, so unless someone has gone out of their way to set up a map that generates more caves than normal, or unless you're playing on a custom map that includes a bunch of caves, you're not going to have caves available. You can't count on it. So basically, you should treat Camazotz as one of your capital-only mages, and that means your capital should be recruiting Camazotz almost all the time. Because Buck-ups suck for the price. Much-Kuhul suck for the price and also aren't capital-only. Camazotz are really good and are effectively capital-only, so you should be pumping them out constantly. Similarly, forests, you should, as I said, lab forests. I should have labbed this forest like turns and turns and turns ago, but I didn't. You should lab your forests quickly, and even if you can't afford forts on them yet, start churning out Wayob, because Wayob are also pretty good. Especially, they're pretty good blood mages. Effectively, level 2 blood searching for 145 gold. You don't even have to forge them sanguine dowsing rods. You can kickstart your blood economy early on. And that's probably what you should do. This game, I was kind of focused on trying to get expansion going, so I wasn't spending money on that. Like I said, if I'd taken a better bless and been more careful with my sacreds, I think I could probably have achieved equivalent or slightly larger expansion without having to worry about that. Expansion on land was kind of tough in this map. I had Bone Tribe down there. Up here, I have Bloodhenge Druids, which are very, very hard for early expansion parties to chew through. And Foul Spawn or not, but the Bloodhenge Druids can sometimes be dropping some nasty blood spells, so I was being pretty worried about that. And then I bumped 3 times. I bumped Asphodel, I bumped Arcos Fale, a large expansion party with elephants who just fucking trampled my frogs. And I bumped Man with a whole bunch of Wardens of Avalon and stuff, and once again they cut my frogs to ribbons. So it's been a little rough, but I kind of expected that. With middle-aged Xibalba, you have to expect that it's going to be rough. Because you'll only get like good expansion if you're lucky. In my experience, I've actually tried to start this video several times with different builds. This is, I think, my 5th or 6th try, and every time something happened. And at some point, I stopped calling it. I stopped calling it luck. I start calling it a bad nation. In any case, once you get past the early hump, if you manage to get yourself settled in a pretty decent patch of territory and start developing an economy, middle-aged Xibalba is actually a fairly strong blood nation. If you can get to the mid and late game with them, you can do something with them because, like I said, Wayob are good blood hunters. Camazotz are good blood hunters and excellent blood casters. Camazotz are vampire summoners, just right out of the box. The Curse of Blood, Blood 3, Death 4, you can get there without much trouble. You can either... Basically, you're only going to have Death 2, so you're going to have to empower in Death. But you can get Blood 2 very easily through a random, so then you have to empower in Blood once. And then you have all the Blood 3 and Blood 4 and Blood whatever you could ever need. There is an argument for taking Death on your Pretender God in order to make Death access easier, but to be honest, I would probably just empower. You start off with Death access from the Cave of Perpetual Darkness, so I would just roll with that, and I would use your first, few Death Gems to just... First 45 Death Gems go to empowering somebody to Death 3. Done. You can now summon vampires as soon as you hit Blood 7. And I would probably push down Blood as quick as you can, pretty much, because Blood is all you got going for you, really. And if you can get a good Blood economy set up, you can empower your Earth Random Toad Mages to bind Demon Knights. Or you can just forge Earth Boots and give them to Earth Random Camazotz to get Demon Knights. Storm Demons are harder because you can't easily empower or boost in air. So Storm Demons you maybe can't get easily, but you can get Bone Fiends if you want masses of cheap chaff. You can get Demon Knights for elites. All kinds of good stuff. Now, the downside, one downside here is you don't have any of the special blood summons that Early Age Xibalba had. You lost those, in the Middle Age specifically. Early Age has them. Late Age has them. Middle Age doesn't get them because... fuck Middle Age, I guess. you don't get to be special. That said, you still have strong enough blood that you don't, like, need them to be a strong blood nation if you can survive to that point, because you can cast all kinds of cool spells. You also have, there are some unique middle-aged Xibalban spells, like the First Soul here. The First Soul, Break the First Soul, is a hilarious spell, which has, there's no save for the basic effect, which causes profuse bleeding, which you may notice as is the thing that kills gods and thugs and stuff. If they don't regenerate, profuse bleeding will usually kill them. And then there is a magic resistance negates to giving them a disease, but basically Break the First Soul is just a fuck you spell. Gift of the First Soul gives you regeneration. So this is sort of a hilarious spell to have, because it's just a regeneration spell for things that don't have nature. So you don't have to take nature, you can take blood instead if you want to build a god that does that. Like I said, I would take nature on your god anyway, but still, kind of cool to have. All of your blood mages can regenerate with this, which is sort of hilarious. You can also cast it in communions to make up sort of a, the start of a blood turbo sabbath. Also hilarious. There are a bunch more soul spells that Xibalba has access to. They're mainly in thaumaturgy. Break the Third Soul does fatigue damage. Break the Second Soul gives people a limp with no save. And Break the Fourth Soul curses them with no save. The gift spells related, the Third Soul is Reinvigoration. The Second Soul is Resistance to Blunt, not very useful. The Fourth Soul is Luck, but it can't work on Ethereal, or it's hard to hit Ethereal. Ethereal units have that normal 75% chance to effectively dodge it. Beyond that, there are a couple of special summons, but they're not very good. There's the Jaguar Toad, which is not very good. Jade Serpent, kinda cool, high hit points, but only 1 attack and size 6. It does have Inspirational, so you can put them in squads to increase morale. And then there's Monster Toads. Monster Toads are actually kind of cool. They only cost 2 gems, and a lot of your mages can summon them very cheaply. And they are size 6 Sacred Tramplers. So if you need that, and if you took that Regeneration Bless, they can be useful. Plus they have a Poison Cloud, I believe. We'll check in the Mod Inspector in just a minute. But, so like Monster Toads, yeah, maybe you can get your Wayob to summon them. Jade Serpents, occasionally, every now and then if you're really worried about morale. Jaguar Toads, don't bother. And beyond that, there's only a couple more summons which are high-level mages. Those are very useful, also very expensive and late game, and as you may have come to the conclusion from the way I've been talking, Middle-aged Xibalba's main problem is living to reach the mid or late game. Middle-aged Xibalba is a huge, big, fat, stinkin' rush target, because they're a blood nation with a shitty early game. So they're like Baratos in the early age, or Bogarus in the late age. If you let them live, they'll become scary. If you kill them early, they don't have a good way to stop you. So you kill them early. There's no reason not to. There's literally no reason to not attack middle-aged Xibalba. And so everyone who wants to play middle-aged Xibalba should know that and keep that in mind. You will be attacked unless you're very good at diplomacy and lucky in your geography, your geographical position. You'll probably be rushed. If you start next to Ashdod, you lost. Game over. Just end the game, go AI, whatever, if you want to, start a new one. If you start next to Nazca, you lost. I mean, most nations lost in that circumstance, but many of them can put up some kind of a fight. You can't. If you started next to Ulm, you probably lost. If you start next to... who else? If you start next to Phlegra, you probably lost. Because they can spam more shitty chaff, and their chaff is less shitty than yours. If you started next to... who else could just rush you down immediately with no problem? Ermor, obviously. Maybe Asphodel. Yeah, probably Bandar Log. If Bandar Log decided to recruit a whole bunch of Tiger Riders with a Bless, they could probably rush you down. Is. If you started next to Is, you probably lost, to be honest. Because you're not strong enough underwater to drive underwater and push them out. And on land, Morvark Knights will just stomp all over anything you have. The list goes on and on. Like, half the nations in the Middle Age are a dire threat to Xibalba before year 2. So, if you're playing middle-aged Xibalba, you need to look scary in order to discourage those early rushes. So in other words, you need to play better than this, because this 11 provinces is not scary. And you need to have a quick plan to get some of your more frightening magic online. Like I said, I think probably the easiest thing to do is to hit Construction 4, Blood 5 as fast as you can to let you bind Demon Knights. Alteration 5 is also a good goal. Alteration 5 will give you Wooden Warriors, which will dramatically increase the power of your chaff units, because it will give them some actual protection, especially on the head. So rushing Alteration is a decent choice if you have forests available, so that you can pump out Wayob, and then you can use Wayob casting Swarm and Wooden Warriors as your main early mid-game combat strategy. Enchantment level 2 will give you personal regeneration for your Expanding God to give it 20% regeneration, combo with your Regen Bless. So that will help you have some kind of a defense. You can also rush down enchantment to 5 so that your Camazotz can cast Horde of Skeletons, because all of your Camazotz are Death 2, and so they are all flying stealthy Skelispammers. That can be useful. However, of course, you have strictly limited numbers of Camazotz, and in the early part of the game, Camazotz will also be your primary research force, because you are pumping them out of your capital all the time. So, basically, you have to hit research level 5 in something in order to be safe. Or even partially, possibly safe. And you might not have that time. So your early game needs to be, I would say, consumed by the overriding urgent goal of how do I stop myself from being rushed. There are some nations who don't have that problem, like if you're playing, well, if you're playing Ashdod, or Nazca, or Ulm, or, well, except in my games, I tend to rush Ulm for some reason, or Phlegra, or Phasia, or any of the kind of the stronger nations. You're not super worried about being rushed in the early game, because you're the ones who's doing the rushing. But for Xibalba, and other weak nations like Middle-Aged Machaka, like Is, like, etc., etc., the weaker nations, those nations have to be overridingly concerned with how do I stop myself from being rushed. So, Awake Expander, Big Bless. You do also need scales. These scales, I've discovered, kind of work. The trick is, Womuch costs a whole bunch of resources, so you have to have resources in your capital, despite the fact that your actual units that you're going to be spamming do not cost many resources. But I'm thinking you probably want production 1, if not more, in your capital early on. Yeah, but that's enough about the early game. The early game for middle-aged Xibalba is kind of a grim time. Instead, let's start talking about the late game and the special things they can do, because there are a couple of very interesting and very powerful late game summons that Xibalba gets that sort of change things around. So hold on one second, we're going to shift over to the Mod Inspector. Okay, so here we are in the Mod Inspector, and here are all of Xibalba's national spells. We've already looked at most of these, but summon Jaguar Toad, summons, of course, Jaguar Toads. Jaguar Toads, not very good. Size 3, almost no prot, 21 hit points. They have a Poison Spit attack, which is armor negating poison damage, of course. But I don't think it's really worth it. They get summoned one at a time, so they cost a whole lot of turns. And Nature 1, Priest 1 is actually not super common for you. Like, if I recall correctly, I think the only way to do that is to recruit Mooch Kuhul. And if you are recruiting Mooch Kuhul in order to try and summon Jaguar Toads with them, you done fucked up, because Mooch Kuhul are way too expensive to be doing that. Jade Serpents, as you can see, they're fat. They've got 62 hit points, size 6, okay prot, low defense skill, but decent attack skill. They do have the Mortal Poison, so there are niche uses for that, but mainly they're just useful for mixing into a squadron to apply the standard effect. They're not undisciplined, like most animals are, and they have high magic resistance, like most animals don't. So, they have that going for them. Also, they're not expensive. 5 water gems. It's not the worst thing you could do. I would probably summon a few to mix into my armies, for the standard effect. Monster Toads, however, are probably the only sacred summon that I would consider summoning any significant number of for combat, because they have high hit points, size 5, and they trample. Now, they are cold-blooded, and they're undisciplined, but they're sacred, so you can apply a bless to them. So if you took, for example, Regeneration and Blood Bond, you can deploy a bunch of monster toads, cast Divine Blessing, or just try to cast Blessing on them, and then they'll be extremely hard to kill, because that regen blood bond will be spreading the damage out among all of them and regenerating everyone at 6 hit points per turn. Now, they do have 6 prot, so they will still die. They'll get killed, but they're highly poison resistant and spreading a poison cloud as well, so regular human troops in close proximity to them will be getting poisoned to death while fighting them. So they can roll over armies that way, especially if you take them by surprise. That said, they're hard to buff, and you really want to buff them in order to make them effective, but they're difficult to buff because they're undisciplined, and so they just charge forward. Also, they have a magic resistance of 5, so in the late game, they're rather more of a liability than anything. If the enemy is, for example, an astral nation with communions, they can just spam Soul Slay at them. So monster toads, useful, question mark, but niche. Only usable in certain very specific circumstances. These, however, are the 2 spells that are really interesting for Middle Age Xibalba. Summon Chak and Summon Balam. Early Age Xibalba also had these. Early Age Xibalba doesn't really pay much attention to them because Early Age Xibalba and Late Age Xibalba have a whole bunch of special, unique blood summons that they would much rather pay attention to. However, this is kind of what Middle Age Xibalba gets. They get the Chak and they get the Balam. Chaks are air 4 mages that also have 2 other paths. The Chak of the North has Water 3. Chak of the East has Nature 2, Water 2. Chak of the South has Fire 2, and the Chak of the West has Death 2. So, excellent cross paths for most of these guys. Chak of the North, not so much, but if you have Air 4 through any method, the Chaks are fantastic summons. They're expensive, and they come very late in the game, but they fly, they auto-cast Storm every battle, so they stop people from shooting your poor froggies to death. They're very powerful air casters, and they have good crosspaths, like the Chak of the West. You can boost him to cast Wailing Winds or Wind of Death, which are great army-killing spells. The Balams are blood nature mages that also have other paths, same cross paths: death, fire, air, and water. Nature blood is not a cross path you need more of, but having level 4 nature mages is kind of cool. Also, the Balams have multiple alternate forms. They have Onaki form, and they have Zotz sorcerer form. So, fortunately, that means they're hard to kill, because you have to kill multiple forms in order to actually kill them for good. And in all of their forms, they are stealthy. And in the Zotz form, they have the Blood Searcher bonus. Actually, I think they have it in Onaki form too, don't they? Yes, they're +2 Blood Searcher in Onaki, but they also increased Unrest, so pros, cons, pluses, negatives. In any case, the important thing about these summons is they're all Holy 3, so they can all claim thrones. They're all either stealthy or very fast, and they all have level 4 casting in something. The Balams, that's level 4 nature, which is pretty useful. In the Chaks, it's level 4 air, which is super useful. That said, as mentioned, they're expensive and they come in the late game. So you have to survive to reach Conjuration 7 and Conjuration 8 in order to take advantage of them. And Middle Age Xibalba is not a fantastically fast researching nation. That's the entire national spell list. If you compare it to Early Age Xibalba, you will notice that there's a lot missing. They don't get any of the special. They can't summon Jaguars, which is weird. I don't know why they can't summon Jaguars, to be honest. They can't summon any of the special blood summons, including the Onaki, the Ozelotls, the Scorpions. The Scorpions, I guess... Actually, no, the Scorpions don't really make sense. I mean, that's a Death Earth summon that has nothing to do with blood. I don't know why you couldn't summon Sacred Scorpions. Middle Age Xibalba, I find a very frustrating nation for this reason, because I want to like it, but it just doesn't have the things that make the other nations in the chain workable. You know, Late Age Xibalba has all the spells of both. Early Age Xibalba has all the blood summons. Middle Age Xibalba just gets the bad sacred summons, the Balam and the Chak, which are good, but expensive and late game, and you're not likely to actually live to use them. It is quite frustrating, really. But that said, if you can get there, if you can manage to get out Balams and Chaks for your high-level spellcasting needs, if you can manage to build up a solid blood economy, then, as I said, middle-aged Xibalba does have some work they can put in, because you have a lot of blood-nature crosspath, you have a lot of blood-death crosspath, you have the blood-earth crosspath, so you can summon demon knights, you can summon vampires, you can cast infernal crossbreeding if you need more shitty chaff, although you shouldn't, because you have shitty chaff coming out your ears. Like, that's your recruitable. You have flying stealth mages who can drop in, communion up, cast powerful blood spells, or spam swarm, or both. You can drop you can drop wooden warriors on your demons and then back it up with rush of strength. So if you get to that point, you can put in some work. You're solid. You have options. The difficulty is just getting to that point. And that's really the challenge that you're going to have to face, is your first 24 turns as middle-aged Xibalba, because in your first 24 turns as middle-aged Xibalba, someone is going to try to kill you. Or, let me rephrase. In your first 24 turns, someone should try to kill you. They might not, if you're good at diplomacy and quick on the draw, but they should. Now, let's head back into the game, actually, and let's look at some Pretender God options to talk about how you can build Xibalba in order to try to mitigate that possibility. Alright, so here are the Pretender God options. Right off the bat, frankly, I would eliminate the immobiles. Because I think you need an Awake Expander. You could potentially do something with Statue of the Bloody Mother. Statue of the Bloody Mother is the cheapest option for that Blood Bond regen bless I was talking about. And this could let you get Blood Bond regen and still have some kind of scales. Because you start off with Dominion 5. So you could get, you know, Growth 3, which is pretty much mandatory because blood is your strength. You could get Production 1. You could probably take Prod 2, or you could take Prod 1 and Magic 2. Like, that would be good scales for Xibalba. But now you're actually relying entirely on your Sacreds and National Troops to expand, and that's a bad call because they're not good. In terms of expander options, you've got basically all the options Mictlan had, Mictlan and early-age Xibalba have. The Teoto Inan is a good one, but super expensive. I would be tempted towards the Worm as well, because the Worm has built-in regen, so it doesn't need new regen. It doesn't give you the Bless that I'm talking about, but it does give you underwater expansion, and you can take, like, Hard Skin and Defense Skill, which isn't a terrible Bless. You can throw in Minor Cold Resistance for the extra point. And this still gives you okay scales. You can take, 5 Dom, and then you get one more scale here. So you can take either Production 2, or you can take a point of Magic. I haven't done the math on those to see which works out best. I think Prod 2 might be the correct choice, because you need to make sure you have enough resources to crap out those Sacreds or something. But of course, with this Bless, you might not be using a lot of Sacreds, because Hard Skin Defense Skill is not a very powerful Bless. In terms of Magic, this will let you leverage your Earth randoms really well, if you can get the income scraped together, because this will let you do things like cast Riches from Beneath, or potentially Earthblood Deep Well. That said, realistically speaking, a lot of the stronger nations have a lot of Earth magic, so you're probably not in competition for Earthblood Deep Well, unless you're very lucky. But the Worm can expand very effectively, as I said, underwater. Regeneration plus Fear, high natural protection. With Hard Skin, the Worm goes up well over 20, and so that in combination with the Regeneration and the 2 Venomous Fang attacks make it a very efficient expander. You could take the Hun Balam. The Hun Balam has decent paths and starts with Sacred Jaguars next to it that are, of course, auto-blessed. Also has 3 attacks. Downsides, low protection. Not impressive defense skill. It's fragile. I find the Hun Balam extremely fragile. But you can take that Blood Bond Bless, and then, like, plus attack. You have to drop a scale to do it, but you do that. You take Blood Bond. I keep forgetting that I only need Blood 5. You could take, like, Blood Bond and double attack skill Bless. That's workable. That's pretty workable. It won't help your Woolmooch repel or anything, because their Obsidian Blade is only length 1 for some odd reason. But at least it means they'll be hitting quickly, and the Blood Bond means they won't die as fast. I don't know. This is a less than optimal bless. The Hunbalam, really the only reason to take this would be if you want a big, stealthy, excellent blood searching. He has utility. I've always, and some people really like the Hunbalam. I've always considered the Hunbalam a pretty second-rate expander. But that said, you don't have any of the real first-rate options. You don't have the Thrice-Horned Boar, you don't have the Drakon, you don't have the Myrmicolion, you don't have... like, the Teoto Inan is probably the most powerful option you've got, and Teoto Inan is not first-rate. She's good, she's solid, she works, but she's not top of the pack. Those three are probably the options that I would pick from. If you want, you can also take a Green Dragon. Green Dragon with Regeneration Bless works fine as well. Or, if you want, you can not take the Regeneration Bless and take Magic 3 and just gamble on on getting Enchantment 2 before the dragon starts to expand. That can actually also work. I mean, it starts off with Natural Protection 18 and can fly. Plus it has the Poison AoE attack, so, you know, there's ways to go about this. But I would probably grit my teeth and pay for regen. Drop a couple points of magic off, something like this. And then if I was taking the dragon, I would just take regeneration. Wouldn't bother with anything else. You may want to take those 2 points in blood, or 1 point in blood, but of course it will cost the fucking earth. It's just kind of a hard call, to be honest. Like I said, me, Teoto Inan, or Worm. Those would be the two options I would consider. They're almost diametrically opposed. If you take the Worm, you are going to be going hard underwater and trying to use the Worm to compensate for your general weakness down there. If you take the Teoto Inan, the water is going to be very secondary to you. You do get special units underwater, but they're not very special. They're the Lakam Ha, the Wide Water Warriors. Say that 5 times fast. These guys are just your basic standard warriors. These guys are special in that they have nets, so they're like Ictiids. Actually, they're a lot like Ictiids. They're basically Ictiids in terms of stats. That said, there are worse things you can be than Ictiids. Ictiids are kind of dangerous indies because they have those nets, and because they can trap units and inflict what seems like an odd number of casualties. Lakama, I exaggerate. Lakama are slightly better than Ictiids, and they have high strength, so they have good siege strength. So, you know, you've got that for you. You can make forts underwater, which many nations can't. So, Lakamha warriors are by far not the worst unit out there. For example, they are better than these guys. And these guys, they're better than them. But that's not saying much. In terms of gem income, of course, you start off with death, water, earth, and more water over here. So a total of 3 water gems per turn. You should not be shy about spending water gems. You recruit a couple of Much Kahul or a couple of Bakab, and you have high enough water to spend those water gems all day, every day. Get somebody underwater and start casting Voice of Tiamat with them in an effort to convert them into gems of other types that might be more useful, because water gems above ground are not fantastic. In combat, you can, of course, use Much Kahul and Bakab to summon water elementals, which are powerful, but those are expensive mages to just be summoning one elemental at a time. It's not going to turn the tide of the battle. Bakab can also be used for earth buffs, of course, and once you research Marble Warriors or something like that, that can definitely help your frogs. But at that point of the game, frogs are no longer relevant. Realistically, you'll be casting it on Demon Knights. Would love to cast it on Ozelotls, but of course you don't get Ozelotl. In any case, that's kind of the outline. Middle-aged Xibalba is a weak nation, and they're weak specifically because their big mages are bad for the cost, and their early game is bad because their troops are bad. So they do have strong mages. Those strong mages are terrain limited, somewhat hard to get a lot of massed together. But if you can get a critical mass of those Zotz mages, and you can get a good blood economy rolling, you can become powerful just by leveraging the powerful nature of blood summons and high-level blood spells in order to sort of bring you back up to par. your struggle as a middle-aged Xibalba is not so much to get ahead as it is to stay even until you can build that critical mass, until you can reach the late game, until you can spiral out of control in the way that every Blood Nation can. But a little bit better because you have Zotz, and Zotz are very, very good at blood. The frogs, I would try to ignore the frogs as much as possible. You do have to kind of grit your teeth and recruit a few Bakab because you want that earth. You want the high-level earth, and you want the earth-death cross-path, maybe, for something. You can eventually cast, like, Hidden Underneath with Bakab, which is kind of a cool little thing that I think most people wouldn't necessarily expect from middle-aged Xibalba, but you can cast Hidden in Sand and Hidden Underneath with Earth Random Bakab. And if you get the Earth Gems together, so you can get, especially if you're in caves, you can break into Astral that way. And if you have a Wasteland, you can break into, like, Fire and Astral that way, but really you don't care much about Fire. I would do Hidden Underneath if you have the gems for it. And get into Astral Magic through the, what are they called? The Risen Oracles, or the Risen, Shaman, something like that. I forget what they're called, actually. Hold up. Now this is bugging me. Released Sages, I think is what they're called. Yeah, sometimes skilled in Astral Magic. So, that's it with middle-aged Xibalba. I will play a game as middle-aged Xibalba at some point, just kind of in an effort to see if I can make them work. I personally think they're arguably the worst nation in Middle Age. I think they're worse than Machaca. After having played Machaca for a while, I definitely think Xibalba is worse. Machaca has problems, like, don't get me wrong, Machaca has serious problems, but Machaca also has some very definite strong points that come online fairly quickly, like, reasonably early. Machaca can be fielding armies that are actually dangerous. Middle-aged Xibalba really can't do the same until they hit at least level 5 in some kind of research. Like, before that, their best trick is Swarm, and Swarm is a decent trick, but it's one trick, and it's easily counterable in an army context. So, in any case, thanks for watching. Hopefully this has been a little bit useful. I don't mean to sound too down on the nation, because like I said, they can do things. It's just that those things rely on them doing well early in order to have the capability to do it. And it's hard for them to do well early. It really is. It can be a struggle. It can be a real struggle. And you see here, if I want that Blood Bond Bless, I'm gonna have to ditch something. You need the prod one, so I guess I have to go Turmoil and possibly Drain. I don't want to go Drain. You could do that. That would crush your recruitment points a little bit, but I don't think you're going to be rec point limited. I think you're going to be resource limited. So this is probably the way to go for the Teoto Inan. And I think this would work okay. It's just a little bit ugly. Wolmooch just don't take blesses quite well enough. They don't quite have the stats to hang with the big boys. And they're a little too expensive to be spammable, so they're caught in this awkward in-between where they're priced a lot like heavy cavalry, but they don't have the performance of heavy cavalry. And it becomes, it's an interesting one. But in any case, thanks for watching. Like I said, hopefully this has been helpful to some degree. If you have any comments, if there's something that I didn't, that I overlooked or that I didn't talk about that you would like to know more about, please post it in the comments. And I will see you all in the next video.